Have you looked at demographics and the impact that they're having on the world? The podcast that I listened to with Raoul and Robert Breedlove was absolutely mind-blowing. I'm going to give you a summary of it. I highly encourage you to go check it out. It's been listened to a bunch of times already on both of their channels. I'm going to give you a little summary that will hopefully encourage you to take on the full journey. And please correct me if you have listened to it and I make some mistakes here. Please let me know, and so I can learn and sharpen my knowledge. But it started all the way back from World War One and the carnage that was World War One. The development of technology and transport allowed World War One to be much more deadly than war in the past. And the war was lost by the Germans, and so the agreements that came after the war dictated that they had massive debts to pay. And that kind of left a bitter taste and left a challenge that kind of pushed us towards the Depression and then World War II. And World War II was much more carnage, much more damaging, much more horrific, and led to new agreements about the way the world's economy needs to be structured, and the United Nations and Bretton Woods and the dollar as the standard, and all these things came out of World War II and set the stage for also the baby boomers. So there were a lot of births after the Second World War. The celebration and the relaxation after such a hard time led to a massive amount of births. And so the cycle of those people coming into the economy dictates sort of what we're experiencing all the way up till now. And as it went through there, if we keep going through the journey, we had the Nixon taking off the gold standard, and Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher in England, selling the public housing to the people who were in council housing. And there was the whole conversation about sort of left versus right and more sort of socialist type governments and democratic socialists and all those sorts of things. But the underpinning thing is the demographics. And listening to my mentor, Paul Council, as well, he's also made this case that there's no families to buy these huge family homes. Millennials are not having these big families. And Raoul said it himself that there is an agenda of depopulation. And he said, just look at the demographics, just look at the numbers. We're having less children. Like, it's by design, and we're having less children. You can see it very clearly with China and their decreasing population. And it's the implications of the demographics that will collapse the demand for commodities. And even further than that, and I'm seeing this and experiencing this right now with purchasing NFTs and purchasing Bitcoin. I'm talking about like, why when you purchase Bitcoin, you just hold on to Bitcoin because it's increasing in value. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to invest. Now, when there's nowhere to put your money, then you look for a place for it. You invest it in real estate or in memorabilia, or you open a shop. But with Bitcoin, you just hodl and you become rich. The people who hodled in 2014, 15, 16 are now doing very, very well. I was just listening to Michael Saylor talk about starting to hodl for his company like 18 months ago, and he had like a billion dollar kind of company, and now they have like $7 billion in assets, and their share price has increased by 8-fold or something like that. So you don't have to do anything with it. It's also a thing when you buy an NFT, there's no jobs created, there's no commodities required. It's not like building a factory to make money when you buy an NFT. So the next generations are going to buy digital stuff. They're not going to be as worried about buying physical stuff. Even clothes and Rolexes, like NFTs are going to replace Rolexes, Lamborghinis. Those things took resources. And so that's the crunch. The baby boomers, they've lived it up pretty well. They've had a life without war and without great challenge like the times just before they came into the world. but it's kind of coming to an end, and they're not going to get their pension. They're not going to get their healthcare. That's the story that these guys are telling, that the picture that they're painting. You'll hear Robert Kiyosaki saying something similar. Rich Dad, Poor Dad guy. He wrote a book together with someone else, Who Stole My Pension, something like that. There's a big change. And so Raoul Pal's saying it has to be universal basic income, because there's just no work. There's no work for people to do. When we don't want all that stuff anymore, when we're not moving around so much, and we're happy in the metaverse, then there's not going to be such a demand for labor. There's not going to be such a demand for commodities. He's talking about electricity being free. Is electricity going to be free? I wonder how that works. I wonder, because to my knowledge and my understanding, solar energy and wind energy and all these things, they actually require huge amounts of resources. So is he understanding that electricity is going to be free from the perspective of it's going to be subsidized because everybody's just going to be living that digital life? Or I don't know. How is it? Do you agree with the world that he's mapped out? And I've heard Robert Breedlove on a lot of podcasts. I've heard him with Michael Saylor, and the case is that we return to Austrian economics and Bitcoin eats everything. And there's the sovereign individual perspective that when that happens, the people who have those assets, they go to the countries and the places where they want to go. They set up their own security. They go to the places that have the laws that they want. And there's kind of a collapse of the nation state. And I mean, Raoul Pal was also talking about that, that the nation state is not going to continue as we see it today. So very, very interesting. Pal didn't really jump on the Bitcoin thing. Breedlove is definitely a Bitcoin maximalist and loves the Austrian economics perspective. But Pal made a case for central bank digital currencies being like a bridge that kind of smooths this out during the transition. And he's saying the next 20 years, we're going to be transitioning from the world as we know it now to this other world of universal basic income, and there not being really any work for the majority of people. I'm not really sure if it has to be like that, because everybody can work on technological solutions. Some people might not want to, but in theory, everybody can. Everybody could be creating information products. If you listen to Buckminster Fuller's book, I'll pull up the title. But he spoke about this kind of concept, but his vision was that everybody would sit at home and learn and create new technology. The critical path by Buckminster Fuller, really, really interesting one, futuristic, gets a bit out there at times, and some of it's pretty heavy to kind of go into the projects that he was trying to develop. But he had the vision for universal basic income, but that people would use that opportunity to really develop themselves and to make contributions to humanity. And Paul was talking about how, as it stands, people find their meaning for life in their work. It's kind of been my dream for a long time what would people do if they didn't have to spend so much time doing something to get money and then kind of medicating themselves one way or another from the demoralization of putting so much time into something that they're not necessarily in love with. It sounds like there's a real opportunity to move into a kind of a utopia. I know a lot of my friends would really love to train and read and eat good food and have great conversation and be able to eat. And they also want to make contribution, they want to train people, or they want to produce content that enriches the lives of other people. But they do want their time back, and they do want to live life on their own terms. So there is kind of a utopia. There is a really positive light side to this where it can kind of seem like a dark future. But I also imagine, like, I've had a bunch of friends tell me, like, oh, this metaverse stuff, like, I don't think I want to be part of that future. Like I've spoken about, I'm a fan of Theta. I'm a participant and I'm a member of the Theta community. And they're like, man, I don't want to really be facilitating the metaverse. And my take is like, what if you did? Like, what if you actually do want to be part of it and you did want to support it and you were going to be in there for like 3, 4, 5 hours a day, learning, interacting, playing games, and then you spent 8 hours a day not in there, in nature, training, doing stuff with your family. There may well be a phenomenal combination of these things where imagine how much learning we could do. Like if all of this technology was put to the service of humanity, where the best teachers were teaching and you know, anyone could kind of tune in and participate, and there were, you know, the accumulation of knowledge and development of ideas could happen very, very quickly. And it's kind of, that's how it works actually in the crypto space with a lot of the projects being open source. It is kind of like that socialist utopia in a way, but it's still capitalist as well. It's a funny mix where a lot of the intellectual property is out there in the open, and that allows ideas to progress faster and technology to develop faster. Like Theta talks about, like Theta's developing its own ticketing system, but they've also funded tickets in the hackathon to build a ticket project that effectively competes with what Theta is building on their mainnet, like their own product. But their take is, well, if they can do it better than us, then power to them. They're still running through Theta network because they've built it on Theta, and they just get the solution out there, and it's on their network. So it's really interesting the way knowledge is kind of being shared and accelerated. We're getting to a point, and some of us are already experiencing this, where there's unlimited money, there's unlimited information, and the question is just like, what can we do with this? What are we going to create with this? So because when people buy Bitcoin and NFTs and things like that, they don't participate in the economy, there is no possibility for the economy as we know it to continue to exist. So there has to be some smoothing of the off-ramp from the world as we've known it to what's coming next. There's no real way around it, just because the demographics dictate this. There's just no one to buy the houses. The jobs are not, the traditional jobs are not there. So it changes the way the whole economy is going to work. Paul makes the case that the traditional economy should wither and die rather than be violently overthrown. And that's what he thinks that we're seeing. One of the other really, really interesting pieces from this, and I'll finish on this, was about the insurance and share ownership. And Paul was saying, like, nobody knows who owns this stuff. It's happened too fast. And, you know, if there was an earthquake in Los Angeles, who's double insured, who's, you know, single insured, who's not insured, he's saying it would be a massive, massive mess. And it all has to go on the blockchain so that we know what's going on. NFTs, you know, also put everything on the blockchain, non-fungible tokens, everything becomes a non-fungible token, and we actually know who owns what, and it's immutable and it's clear. But the problem Paul is seeing with share ownership and with insurance and things like that is like rehypothecation. Things are being sold and resold, and it's really unclear who owns what. So his case is that cryptocurrencies are the solution, and that people are gradually getting it, and some people are going to be really slow to get it, and some people got it a while ago, and a lot of the really wealthy people are actually going to be the last to get it. But at least because they're winning in the current system, then they'll be okay, I guess, as the change happens. But it's kind of just this curve of adoption. It's starting to accelerate, and it's becoming easier for people. I'm hearing more and more about people's mothers and grandparents and things getting into the crypto space. Not so much the NFTs, but it's changing and it's happening fast. So I'm just so glad that we have the opportunity to listen to those kinds of conversations. And, compared to tertiary education, my experience of high school and tertiary education shows like how much better education could be. Like it's fascinating to hear guys like Michael Saylor and Raoul speak. Their ability to tell stories and share in metaphors and speak with power and conviction is a massive motivation to me to continue to develop myself and to encourage others to develop their voice and develop their ideas and share ideas. So I would love to continue this conversation, and as we all learn more and we participate in this, we can create new solutions. I'm excited to share with you what I'm thinking about with building a community based on this NFT model. Again, Raoul spoke about that. He's a huge fan of the NFTs and community building around cryptocurrencies, crypto tokens. And that is the space that I'm most excited about, because my businesses have been built around community and the connection of people. And I can see, so I have Uncommon Success. I have a Telegram group that I let anyone go into. And I've probably got about 700 people engaged in that. I've got two channels and it's a bit of a mix up, but maybe 600-700 people. And then I recently started a group for an NFT token that my friend is launching called Devolve. 2 friends. It's a really cool project and, I love it. But the fact that within a week, 10 days, there's like 300-400 people in that group. And a lot of my friends, were very enthusiastic about it, bringing friends to it. It shows that when there's money involved and when you can give that financial incentive, then people's enthusiasm and energy increases dramatically. So this is something that people who run communities need to harness, and I'm aware to this and looking for how I can apply this to kind of gamify and make it more fun for people to get to being the best versions of themselves, to be publishing and to be like these guys like Breedlove and Paul and Michael Saylor. These guys are role models to me, heroes to me, alongside people like Ben Patrick and Mark Bell. And I love the fitness stuff, and I also love the people who are leading the way in economy and business and helping people to see that there are new possibilities for the future. Digital Dave leading the way with the Theta community. I love these guys and the work that they're doing, and I aspire to be more like them and to encourage my friends to participate in this future. I think that's the key thing right now, is to be a participant. Don't be on the sidelines. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I would love to hear your thoughts.